At the time my story begins, Jamie and I had already been married for 6 years. I distinctly remember the officiant at our wedding with 300 guests, 7 bridesmaids and groomsmen, and $20,000 worth of flowers asking, "Do you, Jamie Elizabeth Snowden, take Blake William Benson to be your lawful husband, leaving all others? Until death do you part?" I also distinctly remember her saying yes, while giving me a goo look, which I interpreted as a vow that she would not have sex with anyone else while we were married. I made a similar oath, looking at her in much the same way. I've always felt that Jamie and I make a good couple because we have similar goals in life and like a lot of the same things, but we also have enough differences to keep things interesting. For example, Jamie has always been very competitive and has been involved in sports all her life, while I am calmer and like to find consensus. Although I look athletic, I have never had the drive needed to truly succeed in sports. She is also more social and builds a lot of superficial relationships, while I am an ambivert who enjoys social situations but prefers to only have a few meaningful relationships. As befits someone with the best upbringing from well-to-do wealthy parents, Jamie received an excellent college education from one of the best schools in the eastern United States and got a job as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company. She got a high-paying job by relying not only on her education and intelligence, but also on her appearance. It seems that Big Pharma wants only good-looking people to call hospitals and doctors, perhaps to distract them from the fact that they are being coerced with money. In any case, since Jamie is 170 centimeters tall, weighs 54.5 kilograms, has long blonde hair, a winning smile, and sparkling, almost neon green eyes, she was very successful. So much so that she was able to register the right to sell drugs in her territory. Jamie explained the reasons why her territory had to take her away from our luxury apartment 3 nights a week, or the occasional weekend. Something to do with the fact that the main drug she was responsible for had a limited but very lucrative market, although I don't really understand this. I don't like that she's gone 3 nights a week, not to mention some weekends. I'm lonely and crave companionship. In any case, I often skipped the evenings when she was away, going to the movies or ball games or bowling with male friends, but mostly I sat at home and watched TV. My job doesn't require travel. In fact, I almost never have to leave my condominium if I don't want to. I sell online proprietary computer software and hardware that makes renewable energy systems much more efficient and seamlessly integrates them into the electrical grid. In fact, I have invented patented things that I sell and can translate software from my powerful computer in my home office and only need to supervise the production of the equipment in the suburbs of the large city I live in for a few hours a week. Since I'm home often during the day, I know most of the neighbors, which is not common in most American apartment buildings, where you only see other people from your building if you go to monthly meetings. Other residents tried to persuade me to become president of the condominium association, but I managed to resist. But I agreed to do the accounting for the association. In our condominium, there are 4 duplex apartments on each of the 2 floors and a single-level apartment on each floor. The duplex apartments have an office and 3 bedrooms, as well as a kitchen, large living room, and 3 large bathrooms. Single-level residences have a small living room, kitchen, bathroom, powder room, 1 bedroom, and a small closet. A single-level unit, 5B, next to our entrance, 5A, on the 5th floor, is rented by a woman who looks too young to afford the rent for an apartment in our luxury building. I'd guess she's 23. Jamie and I are only 29, so I think a lot of people in the house think the same about us, especially since we own our apartment rather than rent. The young woman's name is Cecile Wilson. Most residents are not home during the day on weekdays, so they are unaware that Cecile is at home most of the week and often receives 2 to 4 visitors a day. All men. Cecile's appearance and the flow of male visitors led me to the conclusion that Cecile was most likely a high-priced call girl. Although I had my suspicions about Cecile's profession, I didn't bring it up with her 3 dozen times when I saw her at the pool or at the health club the first year she started living in 5B, for 2 reasons. 1, while she doesn't bother anyone, I don't care what her profession is. And 2, It's not something to talk about in casual conversation. What is Cecile's appearance, you ask? Surprisingly, the first year she moved into 5B, I only saw her wearing makeup twice that I remember. At the pool, she usually wore a conservative one-piece suit, and at the gym, she wore exorbitantly bulky shorts and t-shirts. In the hallway, or when she walked to and from the lobby, she almost always wore pants and a long-sleeve shirt. In public, she usually wore her long, shiny brown hair in a bun and usually wore bulky black glasses. Although I was sure she had 20/20 vision, the lenses looked like regular glass. She clearly tried to hide her natural beauty when she was not communicating with clients, but she could not completely disguise her magnificence. Cecile has an almost perfect face, massive breasts that even conservative outfits cannot hide, extremely long legs with hips that any artist would gladly try to reproduce on canvas or in stone, and an ass commensurate with her sculpted hips. She is almost 5 feet tall and slim, but not too skinny. My relationship with Cecile was pleasant, if not friendly, during that first year. We knew each other's first and last names, always smiled and said hello if we walked by. We had more than a few idle conversations during workouts or at the pool, and the one time we ran into each other at the local Kroger, we had a 5-minute discussion about on how best to prepare and serve organic vegetables. She was a health nut, not just about exercise but food as well. That all changed one Thursday around 1 p.m., a day when Jamie was out of town and was due back on Friday around 6 p.m. I was leaving my apartment to make one of my weekly short trips to the equipment manufacturing plant when I heard screaming and banging in apartment 5B. This was very unusual, especially since the apartments are very soundproofed. I listened at the door and didn't like what I heard. It sounded like the guy was hitting the woman. I knocked on the door. "Superintendent, open up." It was quiet for a few seconds, although I thought I heard sobs. Then a deep male voice said through the door, "Fuck off, we don't need anything. Open the damn door or I'll call the cops," I replied, still hearing the sobs. A big guy opened the door and yelled, "It's none of your fucking business, get the fuck away from me and my girlfriend." He was going to say something else, but when I saw Cecile on the floor and what I thought was blood, I didn't let him finish. In my keychain, I have a cheap self-defense tool. I don't even know what it's called, but it's a very hard piece of plastic, with a straight part with holes for the fingers, 2 rounded ends that extend beyond my hand when I hold the straight part, and a stub with an enlarged head that goes between the 2 fingers. The nasty guy was taller than me, although I am 188 centimeters and probably 14 kilograms heavier. So I took the tool in my right hand and hit him with all my might in the mouth with the enlarged head of the stump. He backed away as I moved towards him and hit him a second and then a third time. The third time he tripped over Cecile's prone body, hit his head on the marble floor of the foyer, and was gone. I helped Cecile up, led her to an easy chair, and closed the front door. She had a black eye, bleeding from her nose, and scratches on her arm and leg. She was wearing a negligee, and despite my best efforts to focus solely on helping her, I couldn't help but notice her phenomenal breasts and otherwise fantastic body. "Are you okay, Cecile?" was my first stupid question. "Can I get you something?" "I'm hurting right now," she moaned, and then, taking a deep breath, she continued, "I'll be fine. But could you get me some paper towels for my nose and a cold compress from the freezer?" I quickly complied with the request, and while she applied a compress to her eye, I wiped the blood from her nose. "Who is this asshole?" I asked, nodding my head towards the lying hooligan. "An angry customer," she muttered. "We should call the police," I said, finishing with her nose. "No cops," she answered quickly. Over the next few minutes, we returned again and again to the question of calling the police, but it was clear that she did not want to do this. No doubt because she did not want to come to their attention for what might be called a girl. Finally, I gave up. "I have an idea. I don't want him to think he can do it again. Do you trust me to take care of him?" "Yes." "As long as it's not in my apartment," she muttered, wincing, clearly in severe pain. I quickly went to my apartment, grabbed a couple of zip puffs, a bottle of water, a bottle of booze, and, For the first time, it was beneficial. Besides the money Jamie brought in, being married to a pharmaceutical sales rep, some sleeping pills from her stash of legal drugs. When he arrived, he turned this huge asshole around and tied his hands behind his back with 2 zippers. Then he turned him over on his back and splashed cold water on his face. He woke up. I picked him up. He was too heavy to carry. Took the keys out of his pants and took him downstairs. I asked him to point to the car, sat him in the driver's seat, and then convinced him that the pills were a painkiller and would make him feel better. I helped him take the pills down with water and then talked to him, trying my best to convince him that he would never come to our house again, until the pills had the desired effect on him. When he was already on his way to the land of La, I poured alcohol into his mouth. He exhaled, cut the puffs and put them in his pocket, started his car, and then locked it. I then called 911 to report a drunk sitting in a stopped car in the parking lot of our condominium. I did not wait for the police to arrive, but went up to Cecile. Cecile's door was still partially open, so I knocked, opening it further. "Cecile, this is Blake. Can I come in and see how you are?" I heard her mutter, "Of course, come in." Now she was sitting on the couch, wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants over her negligee, her head thrown back, with one compress on her nose and another on her eye. "Let me take a look," I said when I was next to her. Then he carefully removed her hand and the compress from his eye. It didn't look very good. "I think you should let me take you to the emergency room," I said sternly. She began to protest, but I said in an even more stern voice, "Cecile, I'm not a doctor, but your eye needs to be examined. I'm taking you to the emergency room and you have no choice. Where are your shoes and purse?" She obediently pointed them out to me. I put her shoes on her feet. "Damn, even her legs are great," flashed through my head when I did this, and we walked, slowly. When we got down to the building, I led her away from the police. They smashed the front passenger side window, turned off the car, pulled the bully out and loaded him into the van just as the tow truck pulled up. On the way to the hospital, I called my production and said that I would be late. I helped Cecile register at the hospital, confirmed that she had health insurance, and then gave her my business card, which included my cell phone number. "Call me when you're done. I'll pick you up and take you home," I told her, handing her a business card. "You've already done too much, you don't," she began to say when I interrupted her. I carefully placed the card in her hand. "No, listen, call me. You may need to stop by to pick up your medication. Call me and I'll be here in 10 minutes. I have no urgent business today," I said. "Okay, thank you," she said, trying her best to smile weakly. Then he patted her on the head and left. I was just finishing work at production when my cell phone rang. "Hey Blake, this is Cecile," came a relatively strong voice on the other end, stronger than when I dropped her off. "Are you ready to leave?" I asked. "Well, yes, but I can hail a taxi if you're busy," she continued. "I'm not busy," I answered in a cheerful voice. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. The traffic is a little worse than usual. Just wait in the emergency room and I'll come pick you up." "Okay, thank you," she replied quickly. When I picked her up, she had a bandage over her eye and cotton wool in her nose. We stopped at the pharmacy to buy her pain pills and ointment, and then I brought her back to the apartment. "How about I bring you something to eat for dinner?" I said as she sat down on the sofa. "You don't have to—" "I want," he interrupted her again. "I'll eat alone if I don't." "How about chicken fingers and fresh vegetables?" I saw her hesitate, and then, remembering our discussion at Kroger, I added with a big smile, "Everything is organic." She laughed with all her might. "What if I come with food already prepared at 6 o'clock? Sounds good to me." She smiled faintly. "Here, so you don't have to knock on the door, just come in," she said, handing me the key from her purse. I brought food, as well as a bottle of wine and a large bottle of seltzer, and at 6 o'clock in the evening I entered the apartment, taking the key she gave me. It was only then that I began to look around her apartment, as I had previously been too concerned about her condition. The apartment was sparsely but stylishly decorated, including several clearly original paintings. They weren't Van Gogh paintings, but they were fun and well-painted. Cecile was sitting at the kitchen table. Her greeting and smile were much stronger than when I left her 3 hours ago. While we ate, we chatted about nothing in particular. "I can't drink wine with the painkillers I'm taking," she said, as I poured her a glass. I stopped pouring. "Sorry, I didn't think about that. It's not allowed, but I need a couple of glasses," she grinned, nodding for me to pour more, which I did. "You're not going to take advantage of me if I fall into a trap, are you?" she asked, with the semblance of a smile. "Then I'd be worse than that asshole if I did that. But I don't want to because I'll have to carry your ass to your bed, so don't pass out," I chuckled. "I'll try not to do that," she replied. When we finished dinner and I cleared the table, I noticed two things. She did have some kind of reaction to the combination of pain pills and the glass and a half of wine she had drunk. Although she was still mostly sane, she suddenly wanted to have a serious conversation. "You probably think I'm terrible for entertaining men," she said, not looking me in the eye and sipping from her glass of wine. "Of course not. How you earn your living is your business, if it does not infringe on my rights," I answered sincerely. "How long ago did you realize that I work as an escort?" she asked, this time making eye contact, with her only eye that wasn't covered. "About a month after you moved in," I replied dispassionately, sipping my glass of wine. "You and your wife, what's her name?" "Jamie." "Are you and Jamie talking about this?" she asked. "Never. Jamie doesn't come here often, as you've probably guessed, and it's not something we could talk about anyway. I don't gossip, and I certainly wouldn't speculate on the profession of a good neighbor." After some more conversation, apparently she was both feeling me out and unloading, she said, "You're the only straight guy I've known since I've lived here who hasn't hit on me." "Why?" "Because I take my marriage vows seriously. More than 90% of my clients are married," she replied. "But I'm not one of them. If you're wondering, physically, you are the most desirable woman I've ever seen. But I don't know you well enough to know if I'm compatible with you, and I've never been into just a physical relationship. I need emotional attachment to have the sexual experience I want. So if you're offended that I didn't hit on you, don't be offended." She didn't say anything in response to that. She just looked at me with her one good eye for a good 30 seconds. "You know, despite the number of clients and the intimate nature of my business, I am lonely. I have almost no friends. My type of business and hours of work preclude this, at least for the people I would like to interact with." After that, we moved on to a painfully direct conversation about her personal life. It ended with me asking, "So what is your ultimate goal in life, Cecile?" "Ultimately, I want the same thing as you. I want to have a spouse, and eventually even children. I want someone to be my one and only, for me to be faithful to him, and for him to be faithful to me. I'm saving enough money so that I'll be financially independent by the time I'm 30, and then I'll move out, give up this life, and try to find the right mister. But my plans are temporarily on hold because until my eye, nose, and these scratches on my limbs heal, I won't be working." An idea suddenly appeared in my head. "Tell me how you feel about working for me," I began to say when she suddenly flushed. "What?" "I thought you were different," she said in a high-pitched voice, with tense muscles and an expression of disbelief on her face. "Let me finish," I laughed. Then, realizing that this was not something I should have laughed at, I quickly continued. "I'm not trying to hire you for sex. I need help filling out paperwork. I'm hopelessly behind and keep putting it off. This is something that even a Cyclops can do if he puts his mind to it. But I can't pay your normal rate," I continued, now that she had relaxed and even giggled at my cyclopean digging. "Which, $700 an hour, $2,500 for a full night, $4,000 a day on site, plus expenses," she muttered before catching herself, blushing and putting her hand to her mouth. I did not miss. "I can't pay $700 an hour, but I can pay $25 an hour and offer free food every now and then, until you're cured." She giggled. "On Monday, show me what you want me to do, and I'll let you know." After another 20 minutes of small talk, it was clear that she was exhausted, and I gathered my things. She hugged me, whispering, "Thank you very much," in my ear. I kept my crotch away from her as, to my chagrin, I was getting horny. I patted her on the head and left. Despite the excitement at the end, I found it a lovely evening with a friend. No real sexual connotations. I liked her as a person, and I never thought that she might be lonely. On Friday morning, while I was working in my apartment, there was a knock on my door. "Hi, Blake," said a smiling Cecile, dressed in her usual conservative clothes. "Hello, Cecile. Are you feeling better today?" I asked cheerfully. "It still hurts like hell, but I'm in a better mood," she chuckled. "You probably want your key back," I began to say, reaching for the key on the table in the foyer. "No. Why don't you leave it, in case I have to be rescued again and the guy doesn't answer the door? I'm here because I hate to ask you for more help after everything you've done, but I desperately need to buy groceries and the doctor has absolutely forbidden me to drive with my blindfold and pain pills on. Can you take me sometime today?" "Of course," I smiled broadly. "How about an hour? 1:30. "Great," she giggled, clapping her hands. "Just knock on my door when you're ready." Cecile and I had a great time going grocery shopping. I think this was the first time in my life that grocery shopping was actually fun. While I don't hate the activity, I've never particularly enjoyed it. I had fun with Cecile, especially when she talked humorously to the vegetables, imagining that they were people. The following Monday, Cecile came to my apartment shortly after Jamie had left for work. I showed her how to fill out all the different papers that were lying around my office and even in the living room. She was very conscientious, not fast, but it was the first time in her life that she was filling out paperwork, so accuracy was much more important than speed. We had lunch together, worked some more, and then I took her to the pharmacy to buy some things she needed. Thus began my friendship with Cecile Wilson. I think I was the only male friend Cecile had since she was 18. Every other man she met wanted to fuck her, and that was his sole purpose for communicating with Cecile. It's not that I didn't want her in a sexual way either. I mean, she was the most alluring and sultry woman I've ever met in my life. But I was married, I took my vows seriously, and I had other attractive women as girlfriends in the past. So I didn't look at Cecile as just a sex object. With Cecile around, the nights and weekends when Jamie was out of town were no longer lonely. With Cecile, I always had something to do, even after she was completely healed, after about a month, and looked as good as before she met that asshole. And since her regular work schedule consisted of morning and afternoon hours on weekdays, with the occasional option to stay overnight or go away out of town, we did almost everything together on those evenings when Jamie wasn't around. I also encouraged her to go to parties and meetings sponsored by the Condominium Association and made sure she had a good time at each one. However, I realized that I couldn't take her on excursions with my male friends. They were too busy either trying to hit on her or drooling to be good company, so she and I mostly went alone. She seemed to enjoy it. Even when she started working as a call girl again, she insisted on helping me with the paperwork. I soon discovered that she had about greater intellectual curiosity and Babu greater intelligence than she had apparently been given credit for most of her life. So I encouraged her and started teaching her about my business. When I tried to pay her for help, she always put forward some conditions. For example, a swim in the pool or how much time we could study in the orbit wreck, for double payment or nothing. More often than not, I ended up paying nothing, which seemed to make her happier than when I paid her double. I found Cecile to be one of the most honest and kind people I have ever met. She spent about 10 hours trying to find the owner of a small handbag with no ID, but nearly $100 in cash in it that had been lost in the swimming pool. She eventually succeeded. She told me a story about a client who developed health problems during sex, and she took him to the hospital and gave him his money back, despite his protests that she should keep it. She cried when she couldn't save a little bird that crashed into the window in the lobby of our building. She found a lost puppy and returned it to its owner, refusing a reward. She tipped the paperboy extra, never gossiped or said anything bad about anyone, and never acted rudely or meanly, even when boys hit on her.